If you've ever played Tony Hawk's Pro Skater and thought to yourself, man, this would be so much better with guns akimbo, Stranglehold is the game for you. Released in 2007, Stranglehold was developed by Midway Chicago in cooperation with film director John Woo as an official sequel to Woo's 1992 classic Hardboiled. The movie is one of the quintessential examples of the heroic bloodshed genre, which Woo helped to create, but just how well was this experience carried over to Stranglehold? Well, to answer that, we need some more background on John Woo's signature style. Woo grew up homeless, escaping from the crime-ridden streets to the cinema, enjoying musicals such as The Wizard of Oz, American westerns like Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, and French New Wave films like Les Samurai. He got his start in cinema by working for the famous Shaw Brothers martial arts movie studio, using his experience there and his prior influences to strike out on his own with A Better Tomorrow, a landmark film in what would be known as the heroic bloodshed genre. This genre usually focuses on stories about good-willed criminals bound to a code of honor, pitted against other criminals who would disregard this code, as well as an incorruptible police detective with a conscience. Themes of loyalty, family, and brotherhood are common, and the stories usually end on a downbeat or tragic note. The defining characteristic, however, is its highly stylized, ballet-like violence. Characters often use pistols or submachine guns, one in each hand, to allow them to move quickly and gracefully in acrobatic combat. Generous use of slow motion is the final touch on a style that exudes surreal, theatrical violence. Hardboiled, John Woo's last Chinese film before moving to Hollywood, is in many ways the crowning achievement of the heroic bloodshed genre, fully embracing Woo's signature style while delivering its own unique twists and turns. It stars Chow Yun-fat as Inspector Tequila, a loose-cannon cop determined to crack a massive gun smuggling trade between two rival gangs and avenge the death of his partner. Tony Leung stars as an undercover cop trying to dismantle the gangs from within, who must form an uneasy alliance with Tequila in order to take down the psychotic Johnny Wong and his ruthless right-hand man, Mad Dog. Hardboiled is jam-packed with tons of exhilarating action sequences, including a shootout in a tea house, a warehouse showdown, a boathouse ambush, and a siege in a hospital, which features a famous one-take fight scene lasting 2 minutes and 40 seconds. These fights feature tons of slow motion, leaping through the air, a severe disregard for reloading, and extensive environmental destruction, especially the tea house, for a breathtaking result. These were the elements that Stranglehold decided to work into its core design in its effort to take the John Woo style of filmmaking to the sphere of video games. I'd like to draw attention to 3 key areas of the game to evaluate the efficacy of Stranglehold's adaptation: the mechanics, the aesthetics, and the story. Firstly, the mechanics. In this area, Stranglehold knocked it out of the park. The player can choose between 2 kinds of pistols, a submachine gun, an assault rifle, and a shotgun with which to wreak havoc. They can vault over obstacles, leap from walls, slide down poles, run up stairs, or simply dive through the air to avoid enemy gunfire and activate Tequila Time, which is just bullet time under a crappier name. The player can also shoot environmental objects to take out their enemies with style. Chaining together stylish kills will grant the player the ability to perform tequila bombs, special abilities including healing, precision shooting, raging into an unstoppable barrage, and a deadly ballet twirl, complete with John Woo's signature doves, that kills everyone in the room. With the exception of healing, which is just a pragmatic aid to the player, all of these abilities are performed by characters in John Woo's films, especially Hardboiled. The staircase run, sliding on carts, taking cover, and leaping through the air whilst firing 2 guns are all acrobatic maneuvers featured in the film. There's a lengthy segment showing Tequila's ability to snap shoot with deadly accuracy. And while the ballet twirl isn't exactly in the film, and is frankly self-indulgent, Tequila shows that he could take care of himself if surrounded in the movie, so I'll give it a pass thanks to the cool factor. Another important mechanic to note is the Mexican standoff system. At certain points throughout the game, the player will run into a heated impasse with enemies, during which they'll have to simultaneously dodge and shoot each one, and the situations get more and more intense to ludicrous levels as the game continues. John Woo is equally as famous for his Mexican standoffs as he is for his action scenes, such as this brilliant segment from The Killer, and fittingly enough, they are featured in Hardboiled. What I particularly enjoy from the choices and mechanics that Stranglehold has made is that the actions you do as a player are simultaneously faithful to the John Woo style and exactly what you want to do to begin with. While watching Hardboiled, I want to be Tequila. I want to leap through the air and blow up motorcycles and shoot every bad guy in the room with style, and Stranglehold gives me exactly that. While the game is a bit short and could be rightly criticized for lack of gameplay variety, the distillation of what's so cool about the combat in Hardboiled, combined with the freedom to carry out that combat in any way I wish in Stranglehold, makes those faults easier to accept. I'd rather have a concentrated, lean game, rather than an unfocused, bloated one. Next, let's take a look at the aesthetics of Stranglehold. Perhaps the most obvious carryover from Hardboiled is the protagonist, Inspector Tequila, reprised by Chow Yun-fat in both likeness and voice. John Woo also provides a cameo appearance as his bartender character. They meet in a tea house of all places, an obvious tip of the hat to the famous tea house shootout in the movie. They even recreate Tequila's favorite drink. The game has several of these little nods to John Woo's body of work, including Bullet to the Head and A Better Tomorrow. Other locations don't draw directly from the film, but are scattered throughout a fictional version of Hong Kong, and the variety is decent enough to feel like John Woo's movies. Aside from a few direct references and the tea house homage, the aesthetics of Stranglehold support its premise without much innovation. However, the animation, sound, and music are quite lackluster and uninspired in comparison to the rest of the game's aesthetics. Finally, let's look at the story of Stranglehold. It picks up 18 years after Hardboiled and revolves around Tequila's search for his estranged girlfriend and daughter, who have been kidnapped for reasons unknown, and are held as pawns in a conflict between three rival gangs. Tequila must navigate through the gang war if he's to save his loved ones. The story is probably the aspect of Stranglehold that I feel is its weakest link. It starts off fairly strong, a dead police officer, a loose cannon cop sent to investigate but caught in a violent ambush, and pursuing the case against orders. Pretty standard Hardboiled detective fare to be sure. But I feel that the story gets bogged down by its insistence on the inclusion of an ex-girlfriend and daughter that are never even mentioned in Hardboiled. The story is complicated enough, with three gangs trying to do each other in, and their inclusion seems to imply that Tequila never learned anything from Hardboiled. In that movie, Tequila starts off characterized by his unchecked aggression, which leads to the death of his partner, his accidental killing of an undercover cop, and a breakup with his girlfriend, who is also a police officer. Teresa can't stand his unpredictable nature, and it's clear that Tequila has some growing up to do. By the end of the movie, Tequila has demonstrated his willingness to sacrifice on behalf of a partner, Alan, and selflessly care for others. His hot-headed ways have been doused with compassion, and he seems ready for a domestic side to his life. Stranglehold seems to completely ignore this. Tequila is back to his old tricks again, even going so far as to lose his badge during his investigation. The story forgets about long-running John Woo themes, such as loyalty, brotherhood, and adherence to a code of ethics. Tequila is utterly alone in this game, with no one but his guns to call his friends. None of the gangs hold to any semblance of ethics, and routinely betray each other. Stranglehold is far more lonely and cynical than Hardboiled, and just doesn't feel right. I can only speculate that this may be due to many years of John Woo working in the Hollywood system that has tried to control him at every step and doesn't seem to respect him. Who can know for sure? Before Midway Games went bankrupt for being over $150 million in debt, a sequel to Stranglehold was in the works under the name Gunrunner. It would have been a multiplayer cooperative buddy cop shooter, starring Chow Yun-fat and Vin Diesel of all people, but never got past a very early prototype. I feel that something like this would have been much closer to matching the tone of Hardboiled than what Stranglehold turned out to be. In conclusion, John Woo's signature use of operatic stylized violence and recurring themes of flawed criminals with hearts of gold helped create the heroic bloodshed genre, with Hardboiled standing apart as one of its pinnacle works. Its 2007 video game sequel, Stranglehold, continued the story of Inspector Tequila and allowed the player to pull off a wide variety of stunts in locales and situations faithful to John Woo's style. While the story has weaknesses and a few aesthetic elements that are lackluster, the game is fun and engaging enough as an exploration of the hard-boiled style of combat to keep me coming back for more. This game gets my recommendation as a very good adaptation to the original movie. Thank you so much for watching this video. Feel free to like, dislike, or comment to let me know how you feel about it. I'd love to have you as a subscriber so you don't miss any future videos. I'm also on Twitter if you want to keep up with news and announcements related to this channel. Once again, this has been a case study from Saboteur Studios. Thank you for watching.